The rain battered the penthouse windows, a relentless drumbeat against the glass. But inside, Ethan Caldwell's world was unraveling faster than the storm. His eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, fixed on the silver locket clutched in his trembling hand, a relic of his late wife, Claire, stolen from their home 3 years ago. Tonight, he'd found it, not in some pawn shop or thief's den, but in the bag of his newest employee, a quiet young man named Liam Harper. Ethan's Manhattan empire, Caldwell Enterprises, was built on precision, control, and an unshakable instinct for truth. At 35, he was a titan-sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and a reputation for ruthlessness that made boardrooms quiver. But the locket, engraved with Claire's initials and a tiny pressed daisy, was a wound that never healed. Her death in a car accident had shattered him, and the theft of her keepsake from their Upper East Side brownstone felt like a second betrayal. For years, he'd hunted for it, hiring private investigators, scouring black markets, all to no avail. Until now, Liam Harper was an enigma. 27, with tousled chestnut hair and a disarming smile. He joined the company 6 months ago as a junior analyst. He was brilliant, his reports were meticulous, his insights razor-sharp, but he kept to himself, slipping through the office like a shadow. Ethan had noticed him, though. Noticed the way Liam's green eyes lingered a moment too long during meetings. The way his laugh carried a nervous edge when Ethan passed by. There was something about him, something Ethan couldn't place, that stirred both curiosity and suspicion. The discovery had been an accident. A rash of office theft spends, laptops, even a designer watch had prompted Ethan to install discreet cameras and, on a whim, check bags during a late-night audit. Liam's worn leather satchel, left unzipped in the break room, had caught his eye. Ethan hadn't expected to find anything damning. But there it was, the locket, nestled among notebooks and a half-eaten sandwich, glinting like a ghost from his past. His heart had stopped. Why would Liam have it? How? The office was silent now, save for the rain's staccato. Ethan sat at his desk, the locket heavy in his palm, waiting for Liam to return from his errand. He'd sent him to fetch documents from the archives, a pretext to buy time. His mind churned with questions. Was Liam a thief? A liar? Or was there something deeper? Something tied to Claire? The thought made his chest tighten. He needed answers. But more than that, he needed to understand why Liam, of all people, had this piece of his heart. The elevator dinged, and Liam stepped into the office, shaking rain from his coat. His eyes met Ethan's, and for a moment, they held a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. You wanted to see me, Mr. Caldwell. Liam's voice was steady, but his fingers twitched at his sides. Ethan leaned forward, the locket hidden in his fist. Sit down, Liam, he said, his tone low. Dangerous. We need to talk about what I found in your bag. Liam's face paled, but he didn't flinch. He sat, his posture rigid, as if bracing for a storm of his own. Ethan opened his hand, revealing the locket. Liam's breath hitched, and in that instant, Ethan knew this wasn't just about theft. This was personal. The air between them crackled with tension. Ethan had spent years building walls around his grief, his loneliness, but something about Liam, his quiet intensity, his guarded vulnerability threatened to tear those walls down. He didn't trust himself to feel this way. Not now. Not with the locket burning a hole in his hand. But Liam's eyes, wide and searching, held a story Ethan needed to hear. Explain, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. And don't lie to me. Liam swallowed, his gaze dropping to the locket. It's not what you think, he began, his voice trembling but resolute. That locket, it belonged to someone I loved, too. Ethan's heart lurched. Loved. The word hit like a punch. He leaned back, gripping the edge of his desk to steady himself. Who? He demanded. And how the hell did you get this? Liam's eyes lifted, meeting Ethan's with a raw, unguarded honesty. Her name was Claire, he said softly, and she was my sister. The room seemed to tilt. Ethan's mind reeled, piecing together fragments of a past he thought he'd buried. Claire had never mentioned a brother. Not once. But the locket, the daisy, the way Liam's voice broke when he said her name was too much to dismiss. Ethan's suspicion warred with a flicker of something else, hope, or maybe fear, that this man sitting across from him was about to change everything. Start from the beginning, Ethan said, his voice hoarse. And don't leave anything out. Liam took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Claire and we weren't close growing up. Our parents split when I was a kid, and she stayed with our mom in Boston while I went with our dad to Chicago. We drifted apart. I was 16 when I came out to my dad, and Liam's voice cracked. He didn't take it well. Kicked me out. I didn't see Claire again until I was 20, when she tracked me down. Ethan listened, his chest tight. Claire had never spoken of her family, only vague mentions of a fractured childhood. He'd assumed she was an only child. Like him. The idea that she'd had a brother, a secret she'd kept even from him, felt like a betrayal, but one he couldn't blame her for. Not yet. She found me in a shelter, Liam continued. I was a mess, barely scraping by. She gave me this locket, said it was a promise we'd stay in touch. She said it was her favorite thing, something she'd had since she was a kid. I didn't know it was yours, too. Ethan's fingers tightened around the locket. Why didn't she tell me about you? He asked, his voice raw. Liam's eyes softened, a mix of pain and understanding. She wanted to protect me. I was still figuring myself out, still scared of who I was. She thought, maybe you wouldn't understand. The words stung. Ethan had loved Claire with every fiber of his being. But had he missed something? Had she hidden parts of herself, parts of her past, because she doubted him? The thought gnawed at him, but so did the sight of Liam vulnerable, earnest, and carrying a piece of Claire's heart, just like he did. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, but the storm inside Ethan was just beginning. Liam wasn't just an employee, not just a thief. He was a link to Claire, a piece of her life Ethan had never known. And as their eyes met again, something shifted, a spark of connection, fragile but undeniable, that made Ethan's pulse race in a way he hadn't felt in years. The silence in Ethan's office was suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the city beyond the windows. Liam's revelation hung in the air like smoke, curling around Ethan's thoughts, clouding his certainty. Claire's brother. The words didn't fit. Not yet. But the locket in his hand was undeniable proof, a tether to a past he thought he'd understood. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low but steady. If you're her brother, why didn't you come to me after she died? Why hide it? Why work here? Of all places. Liam's jaw tightened, his green eyes flickering with something like guilt. I didn't know about you at first, he admitted. Claire, she didn't talk about her life much. When I found out she was married, I was already on the streets again. I didn't think a guy like you, a millionaire, a CEO, would want some homeless kid showing up, claiming to be family. Ethan's chest ached. He could picture Claire, her soft smile and fierce loyalty, tracking down her brother in a shelter, giving him the locket as a lifeline. But the thought of Liam, alone and adrift, while Ethan grieved in his penthouse, felt like a failure he hadn't known he'd committed. I got clean. Got my degree. Liam continued, his voice steadier now. When I saw the job posting for Caldwell Enterprises, I thought, maybe it was a way to be close to her, to understand who she'd become. I didn't expect, he gestured toward the locket, his hand trembling. I didn't expect this. Ethan studied him, searching for a lie. But all he saw was a man carrying the same grief he did. Liam's face, though younger, held echoes of Claire, the curve of his cheekbones, the way his eyes crinkled with emotion. It was disorienting, like seeing a ghost in living flesh. "Why keep the locket in your bag?" Ethan asked, his tone softer now, almost pleading. "Why carry it around like that?" Liam's gaze dropped to his hands. "It's all I have of her," he said quietly. "I know it's valuable, but it's not about money. It's her. I take it everywhere because it reminds me I'm not alone." The words hit Ethan like a tidal wave. He'd carried his own ghost Claire's laugh, her touch, the way she'd hum off key in the kitchen, but he'd locked them away, burying himself in work. Liam, though, wore his grief openly, vulnerably. It stirred something in Ethan, a longing he'd suppressed since Claire's death, the need to connect, to feel something real again. He stood, pacing to the window, the locket still clutched in his hand. The city sprawled below, glittering and indifferent. "You should have told me," he said, his back to Liam. "You should have trusted me." "I didn't know how," Liam replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know if you'd believe me, or if you'd care." Ethan turned, meeting Liam's eyes. There it was again at spark. That pull. It wasn't just Claire's memory binding them. It was something new, something dangerous. Ethan's life was order, control, but Liam was chaos. A reminder of everything he'd lost and everything he still craved. "I care," Ethan said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He crossed the room, stopping just short of Liam's chair. "But I need the truth. All of it." Liam nodded, his expression resolute. "Ask me anything." Over the next hour, Liam laid bare his life, a childhood fractured by divorce, a father's rejection, years of surviving on the edges of society. Claire had been his anchor, even from a distance, sending letters, money, and eventually the locket. When she died, Liam had spiraled, blaming himself for not being there, for not being enough. The job at Caldwell Enterprises was his attempt at redemption, a way to honor her memory by building something of his own. Ethan listened, his suspicion giving way to empathy. Liam's story wasn't just about Claire. It was about survival, about finding light in the dark. And as Liam spoke, Ethan felt the walls around his heart crack. Just a little. He'd spent years alone, guarding his grief. But Liam's presence, his honesty, his vulnerability was a challenge to that solitude. By the time Liam finished, the rain had stopped, leaving the city quiet. Ethan sat across from him, the locket on the desk between them like a shared wound. "I don't know what to do with this," Ethan admitted, his voice raw. "With you." Liam's lips curved in a small, sad smile. "You don't have to do anything. Just don't hate me for loving her, too." The words broke something in Ethan. He didn't hate Liam, he couldn't. But the feelings stirring in him were more complicated. A tangle of grief, guilt, and something warmer. Something he wasn't ready to name. He reached for the locket, his fingers brushing Liam's as he handed it back. The touch lingered, electric, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "I don't hate you," Ethan said softly. "But this isn't over." Liam nodded, his eyes searching Ethan's face. "I know." As Liam left the office, Ethan stood alone, the locket back in his hand. He felt unsteady, like a man stepping onto unfamiliar ground. Liam wasn't just Claire's brother, was a mirror, reflecting parts of Ethan he'd buried. And as much as it scared him, Ethan couldn't look away. The next week passed in a blur of tension and unspoken questions. Ethan couldn't shake Liam from his mind, not his story, not his eyes, not the way their hands had brushed over the locket. At Caldwell Enterprises, Ethan was a master of control, but Liam was a variable he couldn't predict. And yet, he didn't fire him. He didn't even reassign him. Instead, Ethan found himself watching Liam during meetings, in the break room, across the office, searching for answers he wasn't sure he wanted. Liam, for his part, kept his head down, his work impeccable as always. But there were moments, glances exchanged in the hallway, A fleeting smile during a team briefing that felt like a secret language only they understood. Ethan hated how much those moments thrilled him. He was a widower, a man still tethered to his late wife's memory. Feeling anything for Liam, Claire's brother no less, felt like a betrayal. But the pull was undeniable. One evening, as the office emptied out, Ethan called Liam to his office again. The pretext was a project review, but they both knew it was more. Liam arrived, his coat draped over his arm, his expression cautious but open. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, standing in the doorway. Ethan gestured to the chair. "Sit. I need to understand something." Liam sat, his posture less rigid than before. "About Claire." "About you," Ethan said, surprising himself with the admission. He leaned back in his chair, studying Liam's face. "You're not what I expected." Liam's lips quirked. "What did you expect? A thief? A liar?" "Maybe," Ethan admitted. "But you're more than that. You loved her. You carry her with you, just like I do. And I don't know what to make of that." Liam's gaze softened. "I'm not trying to replace her, Ethan. I saw how much you meant to her, even if she didn't tell me everything. Working here, being around you, it's the closest I've felt to her since she died." The honesty in Liam's voice disarmed Ethan. He stood, pacing to the window, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold and white. "I don't know how to do this," he said, more to himself than to Liam. "I don't know how to let someone in again." Liam stood, stepping closer, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to. Not yet. But I'm not going anywhere." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Ethan turned, and for a moment, they were inches apart, the air charged with something neither could name. Ethan's heart pounded, his instincts screaming to step back, to rebuild the walls he'd spent years fortifying. But Liam's presence, his warmth, his quiet strength made that impossible. Over the next few weeks, their interactions shifted. Late-night meetings became less about work and more about shared stories, memories of Claire. Yes, but also pieces of themselves. Ethan learned about Liam's love for jazz, his habit of sketching in a worn notebook, the way he taught himself to cook from YouTube videos. Liam, in turn, glimpsed Ethan's softer side, the man who secretly donated to shelters, who kept Claire's favorite scarf in his desk drawer, who laughed more freely when he thought no one was watching. One crisp October evening, after a grueling day of negotiations, Ethan invited Liam for a drink. They ended up at a quiet bar in Greenwich Village, the kind of place where the music was soft and the lights were warm. Over whiskey, they talked not about work, not about Claire, but about life. Liam spoke of his dreams of opening a community center for queer youth, a place where no one would feel as alone as he had. Ethan listened, captivated by Liam's passion, his resilience. As they walked through Washington Square Park afterward, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, Liam stopped under a towering oak. "This is my favorite place in the city," he said, his breath visible in the cool air. "It's where I used to come when I felt lost. It's grounding." Ethan looked at him, really looked, and saw not just Claire's brother, but a man who'd fought his way through pain to stand here, vulnerable and alive. Without thinking, Ethan reached out, his hand brushing Liam's. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a jolt through him, a reminder of how long it had been since he'd felt this alive. Liam didn't pull away. Instead, he turned, his eyes meeting Ethan's with a quiet intensity. "I don't know what this is," he said softly, "but I feel it, too." The admission hung in the air, fragile and electric. Ethan's throat tightened, torn between fear and longing. He wanted to step closer, to let himself fall into whatever this was. But the weight of Claire's memory off his vows, his grief held him back. "Liam," he started, his voice rough. "This is complicated." "I know," Liam said, his smile bittersweet. But complicated doesn't mean impossible. They stood there, the city humming around them. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt the stirrings of hope. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and he had no idea where it would lead. But as Liam's hand found his again, warm and steady, Ethan knew he didn't want to let go. The weeks that followed were a dance of cautious steps and unspoken promises. Ethan and Liam circled each other, their connection deepening through stolen moments, shared coffee in the office kitchen, a late-night walk after a deadline, a brush of shoulders in a crowded elevator. Each touch, each glance, felt like a risk, a step towards something neither was ready to define. But the pull was undeniable, a current pulling them closer despite the ghosts that lingered. Ethan wrestled with his feelings in the quiet of his penthouse. He'd loved Claire with a fierceness that had defined him, but she was gone, and the life he'd built in her absence felt hollow. Liam was different, not a replacement, but a spark, a reminder that he was still capable of feeling. Yet the guilt gnawed at him. Was it fair to Claire's memory to let someone else in? And what did it mean that that someone was her brother? Liam, too, carried his own burdens. He'd spent years hiding parts of himself, first from his father, then from a world that hadn't always been kind. Falling for Ethan, his sister's husband. His boss was a complication he hadn't anticipated. But Ethan's intensity, his quiet vulnerability beneath the polished exterior, drew Liam in. He wanted to be honest, to be seen, but he feared what it might cost. One evening, a crisis at Caldwell Enterprises forced them to work late, poring over contracts in Ethan's office. The tension of the day gave way to something softer as they finished. The city quiet beyond the windows. Liam leaned back in his chair, stretching, and Ethan caught himself staring at the curve of Liam's neck, the way his shirt clung to his shoulders. He looked away, his face warm. "You okay?" Liam asked, his voice teasing but gentle. Ethan hesitated, then decided to be honest. "I don't know," he said, meeting Liam's eyes. "I haven't felt like this in a long time. It scares me." Liam's expression softened. He stood, crossing to Ethan's side of the desk, and sat on its edge, close enough that Ethan could feel the warmth of him. "It scares me, too," Liam admitted. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe alone." The words broke through Ethan's defenses. He stood, closing the distance between them, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air thick with possibility. Then, slowly, deliberately, Ethan leaned in, and their lips met. It was tentative at first, a question more than a statement. But as Liam responded, it deepened, a rush of warmth and longing that left them both breathless. When they pulled apart, Ethan's heart was racing, his mind a jumble of guilt and exhilaration. "This is insane," he whispered, his forehead resting against Liam's. "Maybe," Liam said, his voice soft but steady. "But it feels right." They didn't speak of it again that night, but the kiss changed everything. At work, they were careful, professional, but outside the office, they began to explore what this could be. They met for dinners in tucked-away restaurants, walked through Central Park under autumn's fiery canopy, shared stories of their pasts and dreams for the future. Ethan found himself laughing more, feeling lighter, while Liam opened up about his fears, his hopes, his determination to live authentically. But the world wasn't as forgiving as their quiet moments. Rumors began to swirl at Caldwell Enterprises, whispers about the boss and his young analyst, fueled by late nights and lingering glances. Ethan ignored them at first, but when a board member confronted him, warning of optics and reputation, he felt the weight of his position. He was a public figure, a man whose every move was scrutinized. And Liam, still finding his place in the world, didn't deserve to be dragged into that spotlight. One night, over dinner at Ethan's apartment, he voiced his concerns. "This could hurt you," he said, his voice heavy. "The gossip, the attention, it's not fair to you." Liam reached across the table, taking Ethan's hand. "I don't care about the gossip," he said fiercely. "I care about you. I've spent too long hiding who I am. I'm not doing it again." Ethan's throat tightened. Liam's courage, his refusal to shrink, was a mirror to Ethan's own fears. He'd spent years hiding behind his grief, his work, but Liam made him want to be brave, too. "I don't want to lose you," Ethan admitted, the words raw. "You won't," Liam said, his smile warm and certain. "We'll figure this out. Together." That night, as they lay together in Ethan's bed, the city humming beyond the windows, Ethan felt a peace he hadn't known in years. Liam's heartbeat against his chest was a reminder that love could be found again, even in the shadow of loss. And for the first time, he let himself believe that Claire would have wanted this for both of them. The months that followed were a delicate balance of love and scrutiny. Ethan and Liam navigated their relationship with care, keeping it private while the world around them buzzed with speculation. At Caldwell Enterprises, Ethan leaned on his authority to quash rumors. But he knew the truth would come out eventually. And when it did, it wasn't the board or the media that tested them, it was their own pasts. One cold December evening, Ethan found a letter tucked in Claire's old jewelry box, one he'd never seen before. It was addressed to him, written in her familiar looping script. His hands shook as he opened it, Liam at his side, sensing the weight of the moment. The letter was brief but piercing, written just weeks before her death. "Ethan, my love, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry for the pain I've left behind. There's something I never told you about my brother, Liam. He's out there, carrying a piece of me, just like you are. Find him, if you can. Love him for me. He's worth it. Claire." Ethan's eyes burned as he handed the letter to Liam, who read it in silence, tears streaming down his face. "She knew," Liam whispered. "She wanted us to find each other." The letter was a gift, a blessing from Claire that dissolved Ethan's lingering guilt. It was as if she'd seen this future, this unlikely love, and given it her approval. For Liam, it was closuria confirmation that his sister had loved him, even when he doubted himself. Together, they decided to honor Claire's memory not by hiding, but by living openly. Ethan came out to his board, his friends, the world, introducing Liam not just as his partner, but as family. The backlash was swift. Headlines screamed. Investors grumbled, but Ethan's resolve was unshakable. He'd built an empire. He could weather a storm. And with Liam by his side, he felt invincible. They faced the challenges together, the paparazzi, the whispers, the occasional hate mail. But they also found joy in quiet mornings over coffee, in planning Liam's community center, in carving out a life that was theirs. The locket, once a symbol of loss, became a touchstone of their shared history, a reminder that love could bridge even the deepest divides. One spring evening, under the same oak tree in Washington Square Park where they'd first acknowledged their feelings, Ethan took Liam's hand. The city was alive around them, vibrant and chaotic. But in that moment, it was just the two of them. "I love you," Ethan said, his voice steady, certain. "And I want to build a life with you. For Claire. For us." Liam's smile was radiant, his eyes shining with tears. "I love you, too," he said, pulling Ethan close. "Let's do this." As they stood together, the locket tucked safely in Liam's pocket, they felt the weight of their journey: grief, guilt, fear, but also hope, courage, and love. The world would keep turning, with its judgments and challenges. But they had each other, and that was enough. Claire's memory wasn't a shadow anymore. It was a light, guiding them forward. Together,